call the meeting to order at 7:04. We're starting a little late. We're gonna start off with just an executive committee meeting because we're running short 4 people. We think we have commitments from 3 that are supposed to be here and maybe the 4th one. But we will get started if nobody has any huge objections. Nobody's yelling at me or pointing any needles at me, so. Why don't we start with introductions, Peter?
Peter Barris, minutes.
Dave Sklar, Wardsboro.
Jennifer Dorda Duque, Jamaica.
Janet Hamilton, Jamaica.
Selena Romo, Marlboro.
Douglas Cord, Marlboro.
Ken McFadden, Newfane.
Emily Long, Leland and Gray, Newfane.
Rich Warner, Dover.
Joe Winrick, Leland and Gray, Townsend.
Carolyn Partridge, Wyndham.
Antira Wood, Wyndham.
Lori Garland, Business Manager, Wyndham Central.
Bill Antone, Superintendent.
Jen McCusick, Director of Curriculum Instruction, Central.
Sorry.
Sorry, big title.
Stephanie Beatty Hancock, Director Special Ed.
Yeah, you're new, so don't interrupt the seniors.
I'm learning.
And everybody, Rich behind the camera, he won't wave to us, but he did wave. Thank you, buddy. Any additions or deletions to the agenda? So, if there's none, I just want to clarify one thing. We had compensation as a discussion in executive session, but I don't believe that the cabinet is ready to propose any specific amounts for a specific person. We're just going to talk general increases in the budget, so we may not need that unless something comes up where we're going to speak about a specific employee getting something different.
Yeah, we just made sure that that was available in case it was necessary.
Okay. And I think that's it. If nobody else has anything, we're going to fly right along, and we're right back on time. Correspondence, I don't have any correspondence. Do we have any correspondence?
No.
Cool, no correspondence, now we're ahead of time. Approve the minutes of the September 27th, 2017 meeting. Now, these are they were warned as both board and executive committee. We did have enough membership to be voted on as a board, to have a full board meeting.
And I'll make a motion to pass the minutes.
Okay, so Ken McFadden made a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Carolyn seconds it. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Policies to be adopted. Now, my understanding from reading it that the executive committee can adopt policy, correct? Were we good on that?
Yep, I believe so. That you can?
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So we warned this at the meeting in Mount Snow on the 27th, and it's been duly posted, even though I don't see any hole in it, but Bill has the official holy copy. So we know it was posted somewhere. And I would need a motion to now adopt it.
I'll
So
make them.
moved.
Seconded.
Okay,
I did.
Ken, second.
now, just under discussion, it says date adopted 9/27, but that's wrong. It should be adopted today's date.
It was warned.
Yeah,
in
warned
September.
9/27.
Right, but
It was the
on the
value
one
of
I
the dollar
have,
that
it
was
shows
changed.
adopted on the same day.
On the actual sheet.
Yeah. So 10/25/2017. So we'll make that one change. Is that okay with the motion maker in a
Yep.
second?
Absolutely.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? Bill, you have a new policy, buddy.
Thank you.
New business, superintendent's budget discussion and possible action. So we will look over to our new BM.
Well, can I talk first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Above your packet, you guys should have a one sheet. It's 2 sides. It's kind of a little narrative on the budget. Tried to make it as articulate as possible to kind of understand our approach to building this in year 2 of our team moving forward. I guess I would just probably say the best thing to do right now is if you just take a couple minutes and read that, and then see if anybody has any particular questions. I can highlight a few things while that's happening. As written, the budget is up 0.85% over last year. As usual, just like last year, we are always trying to build the capacity of our team. We are always trying to look for talent We are always looking for opportunities when people either have retired or have decided to move on. If there are people in our current team structure that have shown some promise, have shown some interest, have shown some skills, we do an analysis of that, and we see if there's an opportunity for us to both be economical with investment, but also to upskill the people that are part of our team. And under page 2, under fiscal implications, you'll see that that is definitely our approach. Under notes on the first page, you'll see the factors that go into how we wanted to build the budget. And just wanted to highlight at the bottom of page 1 about the technology. You'll see that we've been in transition for the last 2 years. We used to have a director of technology, and then that person retired and became a principal. And that person helped us design kind of a transition phase to what we thought might meet the needs of both the central office, the supervisory union, and Leland and Gray, trying to be really efficient with the money and the talent and skill. But that has shown that it's just too dispersed responsibilities for making sure that we get all the needs met. And so we're going to complete that 2 years of transition this year, and Leland and Gray is moving into a direction of having somebody completely dedicated to Leland and Gray. We're going to use the funds that we were purchasing for that joint position to have somebody that just works for the supervisory union. But that is really a project-based, needs-met kind of position. It is not a cabinet-level position. I think I make in my notes at the bottom under Outlook, that is something that this body, we will want to consider in the future. Somebody that's really thinking and working towards technology integration, working with teachers, working with principals on, especially in special education, to make sure that we're taking technology and amplifying our instruction with that. We just can't do that right now, so we're going to make sure that all the needs are met right now, and then we're going to look to the future about making that happen. We got a lot of change going on. We've got 2 new districts that will be coming online in less than 2 years, and so that might be the appropriate time to make that type of investment, but I wanted to give you kind of our thinking about what we're doing. So I feel confident that our plan meets the needs for the supervisory union, but it doesn't go beyond that. It's not a lot of forward-thinking, planning, that kind of thing at this time.
Any questions for the superintendent?
Well, I just have a quick question, and you don't have to have an answer for this, but I was just wondering, it's more towards the business manager. With the district's sizes going down, did you do any projections in terms of cost savings in 2 years at all?
Yes, we started to look at that, and what I think that we need to remember is that the districts are going down, but the amount, unless the amount of employees goes down, it's the same amount of payroll. Unless, God forbid there's a building closed, then it's the same amount of accounts payable. So all of those core functions are really, I don't see a room to save there. Reporting will definitely be a place where we can scale back and allow some room to grow and expand as far as visioning for the future and that type of thing.
Can I follow up? So it's not, to be clear, it's not districts going down. It's not district size going down, it's district numbers going down. That's important. And I'm wondering, there's really no way for you, because since 80% of our budgets are really built on salary and benefits, basically, until those boards are organized and know what their future's going to look like, and I know at the West River District, we're just starting that process of visioning and planning for the future. We aren't going to really know whether we're able to reduce staff size yet or not. But there is still the possibility that that could happen without changing, I mean, we don't need to be closing schools, you know? But there are possibilities still out there.
Right, I think what I'm getting at is the same number of pieces
Yeah,
of
if
paper that
everything's
come
the same.
across somebody's desk that has to be processed.
Right.
And it's actually more because we're probably with River Valley's going to be doing that processing as well. So,
Which you aren't doing now.
which we're not doing now, that's correct.
Well, you are doing Wardsboro.
Yes, but we're,
You're just not doing Dover.
correct. But that's an increase of papers coming across the desk. Right.
Rich,
Thanks.
Good. I'm sorry.
are you done with that?
Yeah, no,
I apologize for having blasted in and,
we just started.
okay, good thing. The way I've been thinking about this is, looking back to the Secretary of Education, as I understand it, it was at her behest that Dan French came down here to look at realigning supervisory unions in this part of the state. She then, when Marlboro was sitting before the board with its 2x2x1 proposal, she suggested no action because specifically she wondered about alignment of supervisory unions in this district. And most recently, we all saw, I think from the secretary, a printout of the student-staff ratios of every school in the state. And what I'm wondering is, are supervisory unions next in line? It wouldn't surprise me at all. And I think we should be mindful of that as we go into the future, saying, okay, how many students does WCSU service and at what either cost in terms of full-time equivalents or dollars or whatever you want to.
Item 6B.
Okay, good. So I just wanted to make that comment, that we should be aware in the future. Yes.
And I think one of the things is that, I mean, that's kind of, Bill, was your kind of original statement, was there's no forward thinking here because he's not sure what the forward is gonna be. Any other comments? Yes.
Thank you. I have one question. What you said, 2 districts are going online. What does that mean?
So River Valleys is being created by Dover and
Okay,
Wardsboro, and then West River.
okay, thank you. That's what I wondered.
So what's gonna happen is, next year, this year, we'll be voting a budget
Right,
like in Dover, in towns in Newfane, Jamaica, all the different towns, Wardsboro. And this will be the last year a bunch of us create our independent budget.
right.
But for next year, we gotta create now a joint budget, so that's gonna be some additional work, cause they'll be finishing up our old budgets and having to help us create new budgets, which, are gonna look a lot different, because they're not gonna be just the one town budget anymore, they're gonna be a combination of a bunch of budgets.
Thank you.
Any other comments on the written report?
I have one question on, as
Can't
far as,
have more than one.
you're probably right, I probably do. But as far as, you're saying there's the same amount of paperwork coming across the desk. Now, when the West River District gets together, where are all the bills gonna go? Are they gonna go to one centralized building, or are they gonna go to each building and then sent up to the office
Well,
to be reviewed by each principal? Because my question is if, say, Green Mountain Power, you have 4 buildings, all have accounts with the same person, you're gonna write out one check.
That's right. And all that will have to be coordinated.
And
For
the
the one
time,
check.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but the time that you would save by just writing out the one check, and you still have to bundle all those bills together.
Right.
And then, eventually, you're gonna have to say, okay, well, we need to see, to make sure each building is using their projected amount. So then you're gonna have to separate everything again.
It's a possibility. It depends on how we build the budget, and, those are decisions that I think that will be made through the budgeting process as we move
Well, for
forward.
example, if we go over on our projected electric by 10%, where's that 10% going? We need to find out, and we got 4 different buildings to find out where it went from.
Well, it,
Is it Snack Shack behind New Fane? Somebody left the freezer, I mean, you know, I'm serious, you know, it could be anything.
right, and I think that these are all decisions and conversations to have as we build the budget. I'm starting to think about, you know, different ways that people request supply money. So, there'll be one line item for supplies.
Can I just interrupt for a second too?
Sure.
So we're talking about the budget that's being presented, and some of
Right.
this has gone on to the budget that we're gonna be discussing this time next year. So let's just, and I think Bill has acknowledged that, and I think it's been acknowledged by everybody. I mean, we don't know what our district is gonna look like, the River Valleys. I mean, I was here on Monday night, you guys don't really know what your district's gonna look like yet. We don't know if there's gonna be 12 principals or 3 principals or, you know, 1 God and 12 disciples. So I think that's all good stuff that needs to happen down the road.
But you're wrong, Rich, we all have a vision.
Yeah.
We all know what it's gonna look like.
Well, that's what I'm saying, 12.
What it's really gonna look like, we'll find out.
Yeah.
But we all know what it's gonna look like.
We all hope we know what.
It's paradise,
We
buddy.
wanna see it.
Paradise.
So I think if I could just, if nobody has a problem with, let's keep on track that it's for this coming up year, because I think Bill addressed, in his outlook, you know, that it prioritizes needs now, and he's looking, there may need to be future investments, because one of the things we're gonna talk about later is, and it's actually wrong on this report, Director of Facilities and Ground, it's Facilities, Grounds, and Transportation too. So I think, you know, they are looking forward, and I think there's gonna be a lot of conversations about that. I know, you know, the other thing, it's kind of funny that you talk about, like, the electric bills. In Dover, we had the CFO of Mount Snow working on ours, because it was really confusing, because, you know, we tied the whole town into our solar thing, and everybody gets credits, and it's based on buildings, and like you said, so there's gonna be a whole nother set of documents she's gonna have to create, and we have the blanks for you to start you off, because it's not easy.
Can I just follow up on that?
Yeah, so, well, hang on, because you get to speak. Is there anybody else who hasn't spoken yet?
I just have a couple of clarifying questions. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. So for the schools that use services, use your services, Lori, is there like a shared billing process? Do we pay the SU for that sort of thing? I know Marlboro doesn't do that, and is there benefit to the SU for us not, like, where, I'm just trying to figure out, because I know there's a lot of gray lines, and I know that there's a lot of times where Marlboro does call on you for, you know, so just trying to figure out what that,
So it's part
Looks
of
like.
the assessment, the central office assessment, and that's based on ADM. So these numbers here that you have in front of you as far as revenues are coming into Wyndham Central, or what your assessment would be. For instance, Marlboro is 77,590.
Yep.
So you're paying a portion of all of our services, actually, sitting at this table and more. But that is based on ADM, and those numbers will fluctuate because ADM is not in yet. We don't have all those numbers yet. So that's just the projection based on last year, really.
so,
But there also is in the budget, Dover and Marlboro don't get, on page 3, you have where we're not getting charged because
Right.
we do our own accounts payable, with
Yes.
our 2 school districts.
right.
Okay.
No, I guess that's more of a, you know, it's not a numbers and cents, but like, what's the, like, cost benefit to Marlboro to not use the services? Not necessarily like in dollars and cents, but like, or maybe it is, but, do you know what I'm asking? Am I getting at it?
Would it be,
Like, is it more cost effective for Marlboro to continue to do everything in-house versus streamlining potentially, even though we're not gonna be part of the River Valleys, or, you know what I mean?
I'm not quite sure what you pay for your services, so, because I don't do your budget or not really involved with that process. So I think that is something I would need to look at as far as, you know, what you're paying for services now. I know that the question has come up in the past, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. You know, what would it cost Marlboro to take advantage of our services? So, you know, I could do that cost analysis again for you, if you'd like.
Yeah, that probably is helpful. I mean, I don't think Gail's planning on going anywhere but it's
Okay.
still good to think about. And then just to kind of feed off of that question a little bit, is it okay if I
Yep.
ask my other question?
Yeah.
This is, I know this is not special ed budget, but I know thinking about cost sharing with the business office leads me to also ask the question again, or put the question out there. You know, the special ed sharing across school districts, you know, is this something that, I know it's required by law now? We haven't really been doing it, so I don't know, Stephanie, if you can give us a little insight into that.
Well,
you
I'm
know,
gonna,
as-
I'm gonna pull that question because
Okay.
all we're looking at is the superintendent's budget
Okay.
tonight. We will have a chance to look at the special ed budget
Okay. I
at
was
the
being
next
selfish
meeting.
because we're looking at our budget tomorrow
Yeah.
night as the first thing.
But- And the other thing is, we do, what it says is that the special ed services will all be run out of central office.
Right,
We get to determine how they're billed.
oh, okay.
You can
Thank
bill,
you for
there's
that.
different ways you can bill, but we are following the law. All special ed
We
services,
are-
nobody
Just coming- okay.
employs
Not shared,
any
it's just-
It's
specialists.
just not shared,
Through the tax.
The cost is shared based on the special ed students, not the
not
total
the
ADM.
total ed.
Correct. So let's, if you don't mind, let's hold that, because we got a lot to do tonight, and
That's fine.
there'll be a chance to discuss that. Is anybody that hasn't asked a question yet have a question? And if not, we're gonna go for round two. Okay,
Mine's
ladies.
just a comment.
Okay.
I just wanted to say, going back to the outlook on your report, Bill, I want, it's more of a comment saying that I really appreciate your comments about this, and that while you're not, you're presenting a budget right now that meets the needs of what we look like today, and it's clear just through this last few minutes of conversation that we're not sure what we're looking at down the road. But with the Director of Facilities, Grounds, and Transportation, and the full-time coordinator, I just want to say I thank you so much for at least, I know you said the budget isn't looking to the future, but clearly you are. And we have needs, and I hope that you will continue to bring those needs to us, because what those will do, I'm hoping, this hasn't really, actually nothing to do with the merger. I mean, we have all the same number of buildings after the merger as we do before the merger, but it's just that we're governing them a little differently. So I understand the reason to wait, but we have been talking about this for a really long time. And keeping it on the table is something that we really should be doing. So I want to thank you for that, even if we're not moving forward. Maybe we will.
May I?
Yes, it's your turn, sir.
Okay. I'd like to thank you. You did a fantastic job here. I don't think I've ever seen the superintendent's budget come in less than the cost of living adjustment. I would like to thank you for all that hard work, because I know it took a lot of moving things around and consolidating and finding the savings where you can find them. And I'd like to make a motion to approve superintendent's budget.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the budget. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, so Carolyn seconded it. I always have
This is
trouble
to
with that.
approve the budget to recommend to the board.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah,
I'm
so,
not sure he knows. that.
yeah, so Ken, what we're
Yes,
doing is
to-
right.
to
This will be,
approve to the whole,
this will be
yes.
recommended, and then
Recommend.
Bill will build off of this, we'll bring us a special ed budget, and then we'll have that big sheet that has all the.
Correct.
Because we have the.
Because there's still, there's a grants budget, and then there'll be the, and we don't approve that until after town meeting. But you give it to us so we have, because I know Marlboro's looking at their budget tomorrow, so.
The bylaws state that we have the authority, the executive committee has the authority to recommend a budget to the full board.
And if we had 3 more members, we could have a full member vote, but full board vote, we don't. So we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions?
This is
Okay.
a recommendation by the committee, not a
By the
full-
executive committee to the full board,
Great.
that this
Recommend.
budget be approved. So it's hopefully, when we have the full board together, the vote's the same, so
Well-
nobody gets a surprise.
I just make a comment on that.
You can make a comment if you'd like.
Thank you, just quickly. I think it's really important that, you know, the public has a time to review this as well. And so we have more meetings so that anybody who wants to share thoughts on this has an opportunity to do that.
Mr. Chairman,
Sir? Yes.
so 2 things. One, we'll post it so that,
Great,
so make sure that
thank you.
anybody who wants to see it can see it. And then Ken, I appreciate what you said, but I want to just be clear. That may not be possible every year. We will do the best we can in every single year, always looking to the future. We were able to.
Oh, Bill, you could do it every year, Bill. I got faith in you, Bill.
Just want to make sure we got that out there.
Well, I want to just throw one comment out. I mean, Bill would have, the business office in Wyndham Central would have presented us a less than 0% increase, a negative number, but we lost some money in Title I that had to be
That's right.
replaced.
Right.
And it was $14,900, which is, how much of a percentage? It's,
About 1.7.
so, you, I mean, technically, we're really, if all things being equal, you're 0.5 below last year's budget if the funding was the same.
But those are services that are necessary.
No,
and
no,
we
and,
gotta make sure we plan for them.
but again, looking to the future,
Correct.
remember, there's always things out of our control. Like, if the state comes along and gives us Act 94 and 3/4, 0.75, and it says that, you know, all haircuts for all board members have to go through the central office and, you know, it costs $100, it's gonna raise the budget. It's no
Not
problem
for
for
me.
me. Or some of us,
We're
Doug.
the inexpensive.
Go for the shade.
I know.
There you go.
God only
I'm
made a
letting
few
mine go
perfect
for a little
heads, the
while.
rest he put hair on. I don't know why I didn't get the perfect head. I'm gonna ask, the next thing, I'm gonna skip around a little bit if nobody has a problem. Lori, do you wanna do the financial update?
Sure. So underneath your packets, you have a check register. So we discussed this at the board retreat, that board members would review this a little more often than once a year where we get the big packet. So I gave this to the officers to review, and then you all have them now. So yours to take home and look through, and please call me with any questions, email, whatever you have. I also have a situation that I need to discuss because it affects everyone's budget, potentially. And it has to do with transportation. So recently, very recently, we have come across, it has come to our attention, that some of our drivers that we hire for special ed in particular, all special ed really, may not be covered for property damage in the event of an accident. So this is what is being called in the insurance world the Uber effect. So what is happening is that since Uber and Lyft and these other organizations have come on board, they have private drivers that have private insurance. And so they're not covering those. If you're hired to transport, you may not be covered. So we are trying to deal with this with our insurance company, Visbit, or Multiline is who we go through. And I was at a luncheon for members on Monday, and Steph has also had several conversations with Visbit around this area. And basically they're saying that they're not inclined to offer coverage to these drivers that don't have coverage. And they really, they don't think they can anyway, based on statute of, I think it's I-90 is what they said, that they can only provide coverage to, or insurance to municipalities. So our special ed transportation has skyrocketed over the last couple of years. I'm sure that many of you are seeing this as you get your budgets, as you start having your budget meetings. You will see this. It's up 48% from fiscal year 16, and we're anticipating it to go above $200,000 for transportation for 25 students. I'm sorry, 20 students. So there are also other members. I've had to kind of do this in notes here because it was a lot of information to give out to you. But other SU members of the Multiline Insurance Group are also hearing rumors that this may become a negotiation issue with paras, because we have paras that also transport students during the day. They actually are covered because they're not hired to only drive. So it's our drivers that we have that are hired to only provide transportation. which we have about, right now, we have between 17 and 25 drivers, depending on substitutes. So I wanted to inform all of you about this. So this is the actions that we're taking. Is our first course of action is we're finding out who is covered and who isn't. So we did a test in our office, and 4 of us called our insurance companies to see if we would be covered. In this case, it was 50-50. 2 of us would be, and 2 of us would be, and 2 wouldn't. So we're putting together a letter to go out to all of our paras and all of our drivers to have with a script that they can call into their insurance company and find out if they're covered. So that's our first thing to do, and then we'll have to, if there are people that are not going to be covered, we're going to have to deal with that as far as maybe getting other drivers, or for the short term. This is the short-term solution. It's a Band-Aid at this point. We have 3 options that we are looking at and investigating. We are investigating leasing vehicles. Two of our great workers in the central office, they spent a lot of time on this, did the analysis of where the students live. So you can imagine, we're the 2nd largest geographic SU, right? So they did where the students live, the time it takes for driving, the mileage, and all of that. And our estimate at this point is 4 minivans and 3 cars to transport these students. So that's one option. Paying the difference between private insurance and commercial insurance for these drivers. That's a second option. There are other issues that do this. I am hearing, again, because of the Uber effect, that it's becoming more and more expensive to do that. So to go to a commercial insurance policy could be paying the difference of about $2,700 is what I've heard quoted per driver to do that. I'm trying to find possibly an outside transportation company to take this on. West River Transport doesn't really have any interest in doing it. They just have the big buses, and they just don't really have the interest in doing that. So I needed to bring it to your attention because there's a risk factor here, and I wanted to let you know about it, and that we are exploring every option, and let you ask questions about it. And so that's really my financial update, to be honest, because this is something that needs to be dealt with very soon.
Carolyn, and then
So,
Dan.
Lori, just to be clear, these are people who are transporting special ed children in their own vehicles?
Correct.
Okay, and their insurance is not covering that?
Potentially.
Okay. Do they have commercial driver's licenses?
No.
Okay, so just regular folks?
Mhm.
Okay,
But they're hired to transport.
okay.
That's
So
the difference.
that's the difference. So unlike a volunteer that drives to a fundraiser, drives the kids to the fundraiser, they're not
Right.
hired. These are people that we pay an
Mhm.
hourly rate to. And we have to pay them through payroll, which is part of the reason that the costs have skyrocketed, because it's the IRS rule that they don't own their own business, so you can't pay them as a contractor, which is
Mhm.
what we were doing previously.
Okay. Thanks.
And we've made that change to comply with the law.
Emily?
So these are all special ed students, and I'm just trying to sort of follow on Carolyn's questions. And they are not, they're being transported by not necessarily parents, but they could be parents,
They could be.
but they may not be. And they're going to a school that they attend, which doesn't necessarily have to be in our SU, it could
That
be
is
elsewhere.
correct.
So it's important to note that it's not just the geographic area. It may be important because we are the 2nd largest, but could potentially a much farther distance for a student to have to, I'm just trying to get the clarity around this, because
Sure.
it's actually pretty significant, and I'm quite surprised at the numbers that we're transporting now. I hadn't heard those numbers. That seems a lot more than it used to be.
And it's also, I know in Dover, we've had, they drive them to sporting events, and, even outside the state, we've had people taking people to Massachusetts. Dan, and
Did I hear you say, Lori, that this is just property insurance that is not covered? In other words, would liability be covered but not property damage? I thought that's what I heard.
So I need to get some better clarity around that because Steph has had several conversations and we had a different take on the conversation. So I need to get something in writing from Visbit that says, what will you cover? Either way, it's putting the district at risk.
For sure, I don't contest that, but it's curious to me that they would split the two in half. I mean, anyway, let us know.
Visbit will cover the 100,000, 300,000, but if the private insurance won't cover up to that 100, 300, then they won't, there's nothing to do because that initial 100, 300 hasn't been met yet. And that's the issue. They will cover us if we're sued, but I said like that's uncomfortable. That's not the way we want to operate as a district, so.
You can't drive for the state unless you have
Yeah.
300, 100.
Yeah.
We're gonna,
Yeah, my question was, is it because the drivers are hired by
Yes.
the school that the coverage is not kicking in?
Right.
That's something else.
and Emily they're hired by the SU, not,
Right.
remember, because it all went to central office.
Right. Right.
Did you, Ken?
No, I just was agreeing with,
Yeah.
Is there anybody else, any comments, thoughts, questions?
So we're doing our best to manage through this
I know what
issue.
they're talking about.
It's, rather, it's a large issue to pull all the pieces together, but we're doing our best to manage through it.
Can I just ask one more question?
Yeah, if nobody else has this first question, go ahead, and you wanna?
So how do the insurance companies justify not being willing to cover because of being
Because
being employed by the SU?
because they have decided that they're not going to cover people for hire. So, and this came about because of the Uber drivers and the Lyft drivers, that they do this on their own, right? So I'm not sure if you're familiar with Uber, but
No, not at all.
it's all private drivers. When you call for an Uber, it's somebody who lives or maybe lives or happens to be in the area, a mile down the road, and they say, oh, I'll get that person. But they're doing it with their own car and under their own insurance.
Okay.
So basically
Insurance-
acting like a taxi.
Yeah.
and then
Insurance
if you're paid to
companies,
transport.
if you're not using your vehicle as you told them, so if you get a policy for a passenger car, they're expecting you just to be a passenger car. And if you're putting, 20,000 miles a year on transporting somebody, that's a business use, so they wind up bopping you business owner policy or something, and it's because you have to tell them everything you do. A lot of people buy a truck and put a plow on it, and they'll go plow driveways, and then when they just damage somebody's property, the insurance company says, you never told us you were doing plowing for other people, we're not covering you. So, I mean, it's not just in this, it's happened in a lot of different areas.
Just following up on the Visbit, and again, thank you, Anja, but Wyndham's always popping me questions. So, Visbit, this all has come about, we've been doing this for a really long time. As long as I can remember, we've been hiring drivers. And so we're now part of Visbit, and it would seem to me that since the Uber thing is sort of what's prompting this conversation, obviously other school districts are
Yes.
running into the same issue. So is this a decision that's been made and finalized by Visbit because the school districts have gone to them, the SGs have gone to them and said, let's have a decision? Is that where we came about?
So at their member.
Or are they still thinking about it?
They're still thinking about
Thank you.
it. They're still
That's what I wanted.
investigating whether or
Okay.
not they actually can even provide coverage. So I wouldn't say it's a done deal, but they were not, so a lot of school districts don't have the issues we have around the geographic distances.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so and a lot of places lease vehicles, and, that, without saying it, that was Visbit's recommendation, but that causes other issues.
So you're still staying in touch with them?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? And some of it also came because we used to always pay the drivers as like a subcontractor because we would pay them mileage and some fee, but then the secretary,
The IRS is coming down on that, Department of Labor, because both are coming down on that because they don't own their own business. So they want the taxes.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
not only that, but they wanna have their thumb on everything. So. Okay, are we good with that? Anybody? We beat that one to death. Thanks for the good news.
I'm sorry, but I felt that that was
Just,
really important to discuss.
just be glad you didn't have to come in and tell us you're increasing the budget 21%. Yeah. And Laura, you're all set then, right? That's the end of your financial update?
Yes.
Okay. You should always end on a high note, not a sour
Okay.
note.
She didn't have one.
Audits have started, is that a high
I
note?
know.
Depends on how
She
they come
brought-
out.
They presented a budget was way under the cost of living increase. Southern Vermont Regional Governance Analysis Report, that is a mouthful. So that's 6 trees worth of paper.
So in your packet, you guys should have,
So, and Bill, I do appreciate, I know I said 6 trees, but it's really important, guys. This is the study that,
Yes, sir.
we talked about earlier. We discussed this, we had Dan French here back in May downstairs. And then he was promised us to get the report to us because it was due by the end of June and we never saw it. And then all of a sudden Marlboro got, proposed their 2, 2, and 1 and the green paper, which I never understood why they called it that till we were up there and it's actually on green paper. They recommended that they not approve it, the state board not approve it, and there's a lot of things that are in this report that were used in that green report. I don't know if you guys have read this in Marlboro pretty closely. So it's interesting, that they use some of that, but nobody's done anything with their study. So I thought we talked about in September at our retreat about making an appointment for the officers. I forget exactly the motion, somebody maybe can look it up. That the officers go and ask requests from the Secretary of Education that we go discuss this because this was all kind of new to us. You know, part of our work was when we were looking at where to go with Act 46 is we approached every supervisory union. We've actually had some meetings with Wyndham Southwest. Steve and John and I think the superintendent before Chris Pratt actually had some conversations and then Stephen and Chris had some conversations.
and all those copies are in your packet.
Yeah, so I just wanted to bring this up because I was hoping people would have a chance to look at this. And what I was kind of hoping is that if anybody had specific questions that they would like answered about this, that they could give it to us. So the motion by Ms. Partridge that the board officers be authorized to communicate with the Secretary of Education and obtain a copy of Dan French's report. And that was seconded by Mr. MacArthur, and then, it doesn't say it, but I'm sure it was all approved. Oh, it was a vote, okay. And because the motion was to communicate with it and, communicate and obtain a copy, we got the copy, we communicated. The other thing I wanna do is just see who the board felt. Yeah, all voted in favor. So who, if there's people that, who we wanna send, just the officers up there? Do we wanna include the superintendent or the business manager or any other people from the board? So let's just start off with, it's a long report. I know it's been sent out, it was sent out when we first got permission to send it out, with the caveat that the Department of Education has not reviewed it. So, has anybody actually read it besides the Marlboro people? Have any comments? Carolyn, did you get a chance to?
No, this is the first time I'm seeing this.
Okay,
I have a comment.
go ahead.
This whole pile of paper comes down to, we could possibly save 6 digits, okay? 6-digit figure, which could be $100,000, could be $999,000. My question is, can we get a little closer ballpark? Because shuffling everything around and doing all this work, and it's gonna be extra work to try to get everything together, is it worth $100,000 of savings to drive the business office crazy, the superintendent's office is crazy, and all the boards and the family's crazy? Would it be possible to get some closer number than just 6 figures?
Wrote it down, and we'll definitely ask it.
Thank you.
Emily?
Well, the study,
No, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
the study was done in June.
It was
and then
completed, he was
completed
here
in
actually in
June.
the winter.
He was
It
here
hasn't yet
last-
been, quote, reviewed and discussed by the department, maybe the AOE, but I don't know, not,
No, no one has.
Yeah.
They have.
and the state board hasn't looked at this, but,
No.
wasn't the vote in the state board for Marlboro going to change what this dream plan is? Because they verified us as an existing district, which means that we can't be merged with another district in the state board vote, I believe.
Well, I believe the motion actually stated that, that Marlboro would be granted existing district status with the understanding that supervisory union boundaries can be redrawn anytime by the board that they want to. I think that's included right in the motion. And it was made clear by Donna Russo Savage, whether that's in the motion or not, that that is the case. So
Correct.
anytime they want to, they could look at this and do whatever they want, essentially.
Right,
Yeah,
but that's for
and-
the supervisory union, but in here it specifically states, talking about moving Marlboro to a K-8 structure with another K-8, should those supervisory union boundaries change. But that motion, to me, says that they wouldn't merge us with anybody if the supervisory union boundaries changed. So where are the savings coming from then? 'Cause, like, I just don't know if some of this is moot now
Yeah.
or not.
Well,
because
and
of that.
remember too, this study was done back when
Yeah.
we did go meet, Chum Sumner and I met with the secretary and Donna Russo Savage. And we talked about the study, and it was done because they couldn't find anybody to assist Wyndham Southwest in getting to their Act 46 stuff together. And so they were kind of looking at why was there such a mess down here, and all they did was they talked to Bill in his office, they talked to Chris Pratt in his office, and then the guy wrote a report 3 months later. After, and she did kind of say it was a moot point, kind of, because they had moved forward.
Yeah.
So it's there, but again, they haven't done anything with it. But it is sitting there, it is an official report, and the state of Vermont did pay for it. So we had some questions, so we want to talk to her about it, and that's why we're trying to get together here. So,
So I just wanted to say that I appreciate Ken's comments on dollars, and I think that that's valid and important, what he said. But I also think that we need to be looking at this from educational opportunities and how does this benefit our students as well, and our communities. So I hope that part of this conversation moving forward will keep that on the forefront of all of our conversations. And just following up on Doug's question, my understanding that day from the secretary was that Marlboro was going to be able to continue in there as a single district, regardless of whether they were granted the status of a 3x1 or a 2x2x1, with whichever you were gonna ask for, which I didn't think the boundaries had anything to do with that conversation. Changing the boundaries wouldn't change that status of Marlboro, in my mind. So if there was a concern on your part that by changing the supervisory union boundaries would change the status of Marlboro in the future, you probably should ask the officers or whoever goes up there to ask that question, I would think. That wasn't what I heard, but I could be absolutely wrong, and that seems pretty significant in my
so
mind.
if the SU boundaries change, how does that affect Marlboro and then the recent decision?
Well, it won't, because they were approved, I don't
Right.
think it
And then because we have a
can.
vote coming up on that, I don't
Yeah.
think it's gonna change it, but
Well,
I'm just saying
trying to break
specifically,
down
when I
this,
read the portions of this that
Yeah.
related to Marlboro, it was all about the
Moving on to-
WCSU has not shrunk down to the smallest size it could possibly be. If you were to change these boundaries, it would allow the other districts to shrink down into
Well, it
the
would
more
allow a
preferred
new
structures.
district.
It's to
Right.
merge.
So-
And I think that what it's saying, based on our vote, is not allowed anymore.
So
I agree
here,
with that,
here's on
yes.
page 3, I conclude supervisory union realignment and the creation of a single SU for the region would enable local decision makers to better meet state education policy goals for equity and efficiency and create a more sustainable alternative structure as defined by Act 46. remember that this was written before Act 49 was dreamed up, too. Or, you know,
Well-
the study was done. It was written on 6/30, we don't know when it was written, but it was submitted on 6/30. So Act 49 had come into effect, but when he came down and did his study or looked around before he wrote the paper, Act 49 wasn't even,
Still
yeah,
being
working
thought
its
about.
way through the government.
So what are you saying, we need a rewrite?
I don't know, but I'm gonna, so the question I think, Doug, is, if I'm getting it right, and Emily, is if the SU boundaries change, how does this affect the recent Marlboro decision?
I mean, I don't think it's a question, but mine is
Okay,
just,
well,
I
no.
feel like this is, when it says here, the WCSU has failed to merge down to the smallest number of districts practicable, with the exclusion of Wyndham, it says, but I feel like we currently have, we've done that.
But even when that was
Yeah.
written, you guys still hadn't,
Right.
didn't know what you were doing.
Right.
Correct, that's what I'm
So,
saying, I
yeah.
feel like a lot of this
Okay.
is moved in terms of where we are now, and
Perfect.
what's shaken out.
Well, make sure it is.
Let me just, there's some key quotes from the report that we came up with in. One of the things is, in these types of government structures, the supervisory union becomes the overarching structure through which collective responsibility for student outcomes is developed, so I think he wants to see, you know, a bigger SU. On page 19, he states supervisory unions that become more systematic with interventionists tend to shift the employment of these staff from the school district to the SU. So I don't know if that's specific to us, because we've already done that. All our interventionists go through central office. So I don't know if that's more of a Wyndham Southwest thing, that maybe they haven't done that yet.
Well, I would just clarify that when you use the term interventionist, in edu speak, that would be a non-special education person.
Oh,
Like, think of Patsy Bemis.
okay.
It would be the prevention of
So it's
special.
more like the support ESS group kind of people, okay.
Yeah.
So no, we don't run them out of central office.
Correct.
Does everybody get that? Does that make sense to people? See a lot of heads nodding yes, nobody nodding off. Page 21, according to staff census data submitted to the state, both SUs operate lean central offices. Just look at the size of them over there, they're all small. Page 22, SUs that have a more advanced degree of centralization tend to have dedicated staff associated with managing buildings and facility maintenance, technology, and school food service programs. Service programs does come out of central office now, right?
Yes.
And we're talking about managing buildings and facility and maintenance, so I mean, I think we're on the right track with that. Page 24, neither organization has an especially robust central office, which is an indicator of both efficiency and capacity. Consolidation of districts might reduce costs, but it will increase capacity, since it would likely allow central office staff to spend more time on instructional leadership activities and less time on duplicative functions. So that's kind of was, you know, what any of us put together when we were looking at Act 46 paperwork. Page 30, I would have to say the schools in the WCSU and WSSU are more isolated from each other than many in the kingdom due to the mountainous terrain, a significant variable when considering any changes to the government structure. I mean, I don't know how many times Carolyn,
We've said it over and over.
Doug, in the Marlboro, and we've all argued that you can't just look at a flat map and measure out the mileage.
Amen, brother.
I ripped maps off the walls in House Ed because of it.
And then page 34, this model could be adopted by the State Board of Education as part of their statewide plan for governance in 2019. And he puts down in there, and this is on page 34, he was moving Southern Valleys, River Valleys, West River, and Twin Valley, the high schools, and Stratton and Searsburg. And then there's some options, again, I think Doug, those are the ones you were commenting on.
Yeah.
That's on page 34. Page 36, a more robust central office could be created through the realignment. Both SUs have limited capacity in areas of human resource support and curriculum coordination. A consolidated central office would provide greater capacity in these areas and support the expanded coordination and centralization of facilities, maintenance, transportation, and food services again, which is, Bill is already kind of addressed that that's something we should look at. And I think, I can't believe you used that word robust.
Not
must have-
particularly robust, if I remember right.
Yeah.
But they do look robust.
It must be an
I guess.
AOE term. I use robust a lot.
And then, so his conclusion on page 41 is supervised union and realignment in the WCSU and WSSU region could go a long way towards improving the sustainability of the school governance structure. And that was the major goal of Act 46, was sustainability. Did that come up in your conversation on Monday night, sustainability with the West River group?
Yes.
So, I mean, that even something that, the groups are looking at. So, those are kind of the keynotes that some of us took away from that. I don't know if anybody else has anything. Again, I guess what frosts my backside a little bit is, we went to them and we discussed this kind of stuff. And we pretty much got shot down. So this started back when you were chairman, and we had that big meeting in Dover, and you and Chum Sumner.
Oh my
and-
God, that was,
and-
Steve
no,
Dale came down.
Right, and we kind of
Two
discussed,
SUs.
is there something we can do together? And we did a bunch of work, and then there was a
We
study.
appointed a committee of 6,
Yep, the gang of 6.
gang of 6.
You, me, and Ken, and it was
Chum and
Seth Boyd, and
Lloyd
then,
and,
was it the former principal at the high school, John
John
Doty?
Doty.
And then, Bill, you had conversations, we met last winter? Or was it the one, when did we meet? No, you weren't superintendent yet, Steve, you had not been involved,
I
so.
have not.
When Stephen was still here, so, we've got out there and we've asked, and I guess one of my questions is, how does this group feel about us going back to Wyndham Southwest and saying, hey, you wanna have another conversation based on the French report? Because I guess what really scares me is we've built a really good structure here, and the report basically says erase the lines and start over again. It's not one group combining so some of the questions that I had was, how does the AOE envision this process, the merger of the two SUs? How do you have leadership for the transition? Who decides upon the core office staff, the role of each board during the transition to the new SU? Look at how it's played out in the past, and, where are we gonna move? How would we move forward with this? Or, what is your envisioning of this? Because again, we all know just forming little districts and the work you guys did and the work, Carolyn, you're doing, is could any of us really be ready to start, July 1st? And that was what they really wanted us to do. We're kind of looking forward and saying, we're gonna be darn close to get Dover, Wardsboro, just 2 schools, ready for, July 1st, 2019. I couldn't imagine trying to put 2 SUs together. I mean, then we would be saying to them, not only do you have this to study, but let's add even more work. So I guess those are my kind of questions. I mean, what are their thoughts?
So I'm gonna suggest, Rich, that we let sleeping dogs lie. I guess I think the more we stir this, the smellier it'll get. I'm not sure, and other people said at the State Board of Ed meeting that if it ever is really looked at, it will be many, many years down the road. Build our case, keep ourselves strong as an SU, and be prepared if it ever does come, but not stir that one up too much. I was also struck, reading through this, how little reference there is to actual educational outcomes. Lots of administrative, but not an awful lot. Like Emily was saying, it should be, if we want to concentrate on education, let's do that, but let's not get, I wish that he had thought more about education, and I would think that we would, if we ever do go down that road, think more about education rather than just simple administration. So my recommendation is, don't stir it up too much.
So, don't even go up and meet with the secretary, cancel that.
I guess I would say, I haven't heard any questions come up yet that are important enough to.
Do you mind, you haven't got to speak yet, go ahead.
No, I understand where you're coming from, but after what happened with Marlboro and the statement that was made to Marlboro, that's where our concern is growing out of, more than I think even this, which has already been stated they haven't reviewed. To say, we'll let you do this, but at the same time, things might not stay the same. That message was given to us. To kind of not address it is a little bit irresponsible of us to just kind of go, okay, we'll wait and see. You know, that's why we made the decision at the last meeting to say, let's have you go up and have a conversation with them. Like, where is that coming from?
I was just wondering, I think letting it lie is one thing, but I also feel like, is there a way for them to notify us when they do plan to talk about this? Because we don't know what's gonna shake out to the right of us either. I mean, that's a necessary vote that's gonna go down, and if one district says no, then they've got a whole other thing to handle with no backup plan over there. There's nobody doing any alternative governance structures or anything right now that I'm aware of. So, they're looking at us, I think, as a one
You
band.
mean-
Brattleboro.
Okay, Brattleboro, I'm sorry.
I think that they're looking at us currently as one band, as was talked about with us when we went out for the green sheet. They thought more about Marlboro with Brattleboro than they did about us this way.
Yes, they do.
So I am of two minds. One is, let's not go up there and force our way in, but let's say we really need to be a part of these conversations. And the next time this is brought up in any capacity, we need to be notified so we can send representatives up to the meetings. That's my suggestion.
Be involved.
Yes.
But we can also just do that with a letter without going up to have a meeting.
Well, yeah, but they also clearly were using this in some regard,
Yeah, but
even though they said they weren't.
I know. And, you know, so I think it's bad to kind of like go, hey, you're lying. Again, I kind of almost, in some spots, it's sometimes nice to just let some things lie. Emily?
I'm just curious, I can't remember the conversation that you had, but I know they had not reviewed this, but that didn't mean they weren't going to review it, is that right?
Right, no, they hadn't
So,
reviewed it
so they
at
had
this
not
time.
had time, they were busy, they hadn't had time to go
Yeah.
through the review. So I think we can expect that if they paid for a report, at the right time, they're going to
Yeah.
use the report. I think that's one important thing to keep in mind. The second thing, I would just say that going back to what Rich just described as the communications that we had between the two SUs, there's two parts of this that I think are really important. One is that, and this is no reflection on either our SU or theirs, but we really struggled to even get a conversation going between the two SUs multiple times. And I think that there was a fair amount of commitment on the side of Wyndham Southwest. I know there was commitment on our side, because we were always trying to meet. And they couldn't pull it together because they had some serious challenges over there with the turnover in leadership nonstop for quite some time. And one of the things that arose and why we sort of walked away, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, Rich, but was that we started to realize through asking our superintendents to do a little analysis on their own, that it was going to be more challenging for Wyndham Central, and the benefits were all going to go to Wyndham Southwest. Now, I care about kids, and Wyndham Southwest kids are really important too. So that's fine, but I don't think that any form of merger should make it more challenging. Another thing I think is important to say is that we just talked about geographic challenges that we're having here. I mean, we just talked about them for special ed. I do not see that getting better with a much larger geographic system. The last thing I just want to say about this is, if there is some need for the agency and the state board to redraw boundaries, SU boundaries, and they have the right to do it, as everybody stated, they've always had the right to do it, and they may feel they need to do it. I would be disappointed if they just took two SUs and put them together. I don't think that's an analysis, I don't think that's a thinking process. I think that doesn't take geography and kids and culture and relationships that some of us in our SU have with other SUs. Some districts have with other districts outside of our SU. I think it's really important to look at it systematically from a broader level. So maybe they should look at it from Wyndham County level, but why just take two SUs and just bind them together? So those are questions that I have.
You guys on this side?
I'm good.
We know you're good, but I mean, do you have any questions?
No, I think everything that's been said has been really, really important.
Does anybody know, Carolyn? I don't know if you have any towns over that way. What's going on like with Bells Falls and that area? Well, I don't know, Wyndham North,
Their merger failed.
Right.
So their merger failed. I know that Chris Kibbe was interested in talking to Wyndham. I haven't done that yet. Chris is an old friend, but what I don't think he realizes is that we are part of the Leland and Gray Union District, and so we don't really have an opportunity to talk with them. So, once again, Wyndham is geographically isolated, and while it's not so mountainous on the Grafton side, going toward Grafton, Athens is part of the Bellows Falls, Wyndham Northeast. That road is pretty terrible during the mud season. It would be really difficult to, be making a connection with them that way. We just have a treacherous hill to come down this way.
But at least it's paved.
No,
Not
no.
in spots.
Not fully.
Or actually, dirt might be better in some cases.
Especially when you get that little bit of freezing rain.
That's why I go back way.
Any other thoughts or comments?
I'd like to say something.
You can say anything you want.
I haven't read the report, and I will read the report, but I have to honestly say that having 62 supervisory unions in the state as small as Vermont has always been kind of a shock to me. And I know there's something to be said about, our current relationship within our own SU, but still, that astronomical number of SUs in such a small state just really has always, has always given me some kind of shock, I can only say it that way, because they're all really, really pricey. And I always wondered if there isn't something that could be done to change that. Because I think an SU just being responsible for barely 1,000 kids seems very, very small to me. It just seems that way. I don't really have enough knowledge to know what it would be like to merge 2 supervisory unions, or maybe even 10 of them, to whittle down the number to maybe 20 or 30. But I think it's a good start to start looking at that. And I'd rather be looking at the top level than looking at this, at the kids having to be trucked around or having to change their environment, or towns potentially losing schools. That's my comment. I will read the report and hopefully be a little more educated the next time.
Well, hopefully it won't be next time. Hopefully this will go to bed for a while. So one of the comments made, I think Dan and Emily and Bruce or Doug, I'm sorry, was
Springsteen.
yeah, Bruce Springsteen. Yeah.
That's a compliment.
Was,
From New Jersey.
we're not even looking at small districts. We're looking at micro districts, and when the secretary said that, I get really mad, because about 5 or 6 years ago we were at town meeting. Remember, Bill, a pre-town meeting, and I said, well, darn, we better get New Hampshire to take us over, because we're just not big enough to be a state, and we better let New Hampshire, New York absorb us so we can be big enough to do all the stuff.
New Hampshire doesn't want us.
I know, neither does
We
New
used
York
to be.
anymore. They both try to get rid of us. So again, and then, actually we're more associated with Massachusetts. But today, it's interesting, I had a little tour of the state today. I went to Newport, then we went over to Morrisville, and then we went to Waterbury.
That's a great trip.
It was kind of a neat trip, but I'm driving around saying, we covered almost all the state in 8 hours, 9 hours, and it seems small, but then I'm thinking to myself, so hey, Bill, you know what, there's a problem at the Newport school, go deal with that today, and then, 15 minutes later, you gotta get to Morrisville, and then, hey, Reedsboro has an issue, and then when you're done there, maybe you can hit Stamford on your way home, and hey, maybe you'll see your family Sunday.
Never.
I mean, again, like we keep saying, like Emily said, she rips a map off the wall. I mean, unfortunately, this is the way Vermont is, and it would be really hard, well, fortunately, but unfortunately, when you're trying to make bigger districts, so unless, and when Act 60 came out, somebody from Londonderry wrote this really scathing article about, well, let's just take all the kids, and we had the training center in Brandon or something they were closing. We'll move them all the students up there, and then we can all educate them in one spot. We don't have to truck them, and then they can come home, for like summer, some breaks.
Weekends.
Yeah, well, not even weekends. We want to keep them there. there is a lot of difficulties here, and I feel bad because, you know, we sit here and we gotta look at Wyndham Central, great job, you know, on just a 0.8 budget increase. But if Burlington decides to triple their budget, that's gonna have a bigger effect on us than if we tripled our budget, you know, and so we're controlling things up there. It's so many pieces. And again, you know, not to, because she's sitting next to me and I don't wanna get hit, or the one over there.
hit.
But the legislators, you know, I mean, they're not just looking at the school stuff, they gotta look at how that intertwines, and there's just so much going on, so it's a very difficult thing. I just think we wanna make sure that we don't get harmed and our kids don't get harmed, which I really agree. And I think we have a great supervisory union, every time we go up north, we tell people that. But I just think we really need to pay attention, and this is part of paying attention. So if everybody's okay, I think we'll have the 3 officers. We've got a tentative date scheduled, and we'll just ask the questions that we read earlier. I've got a few questions from you guys about a clear picture of the savings numbers, because I think that's when they do that, and that we just like to be notified again, because the only way we found out that anything was going on was Bill calls me and says, hey, Dan French is down here talking about stuff. Do you know anything? I mean, and that didn't seem kind of right either, you know. And then what does that say to our central office staff? We have a brand new special education director, you know, and hey, Brattleboro's got an opening next year, you know. Well, I know if I go to Brattleboro, that's going to be around for a while. Do I jump ship now? And one of the things we talked about with, you know, people in Marlboro, if they're not going to have the same school, you know, how do we retain staff? How do we get a good superintendent? How do we get the curriculum people? You know, we're looking next year maybe or the year after for technology. Well, they're saying, hey, that might be a 1-year job. I mean, I think all these things kind of play into it. So I think that's what we'll try to express. We'll, you know, again, I've always been say we're blessed with all the legislators we have in the WCSU. They may change that at some point when they move us around. They may say there's too much power down there. But I think we'll just pay attention. We'll do those few things. If anybody thinks of any, or if anybody else in your boards, when you have a board meeting, email me if there's anything specific you want asked. And Dan, I think the feeling, or
No, I'm fine with that. I think that's great. Go for it,
okay,
Rich.
is,
Yep.
is that good with everybody?
Yep.
Just don't make it smell too
Ask them
much.
why they think it should be housed in Dover too. There was a mention of that.
Well, I think they were trying to
Yeah.
centralize things.
Centralize it.
Rich, will one of the questions be about educational opportunities because it was missing from the analysis?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of the main things that Secretary Hilton said in our green sheet was
Right.
we're really focusing on expansion of opportunities, but this did not mention it at all.
Okay, I didn't get to you guys. Anything from the cabinet there? Bill's looking very solemn.
No, I think that was a wonderful discussion. I think what Anja said is what I hear, that there's definite energy, that 62 is too many. And I think that going up and being curious and just talking and being reasonable and being proactive like you guys have been since Act 46 came into play, and before that, I think that's super smart.
I mean, because you brought, I wasn't gonna say anything about the 62 and Anja's comment, but since you brought it up again, I think it's important to know that one of our own Wyndham County legislators many years ago, Rick Hubie, and Carolyn's gonna remember this just as well as me, had his, what was it called, Maple Leaf or Maple something, his proposal,
The
which is,
Leaf proposal.
Leaf, yeah.
Something like that.
yeah.
He just didn't ever fund it.
Right, he didn't, but I mean, he and I had many, he passed away, and it's Oliver's district now, but,
Not for long.
not for long, but, I had many conversations with him as he was developing this proposal, long before I was in the legislature, and I had some really great concerns about it. Again, we're not New York, we're not New Hampshire, we're Vermont, and we are rural, and we're dealing with those challenges around being rural. But one of the concerns I've always had is where, and mind you, this bill is still there. Heidi Sherman, Representative Sherman from the Stowe area has kept it alive and, in fact, brought it to us during the last few years. again, and it's, I believe, still on our wall to look at. And these proposals continue to come up, and basically they are SUs around career centers, the career and technical centers. So there was like 16 or 17 of them or something like that. And my questions about them have always been, where does the money flow? And it flows to a regional SU board and then out. And so while I recognize the value and benefit of maybe having less SUs just on the surface of that, to be able to have any local connection, and I mean local by, we're sitting here, we're multiple towns, and I feel this is pretty local. But when we move it to Windham County, I'm not sure how much of a voice Windham's gonna have in that conversation. It's not as close anymore, and the money flows to that regional board and then out to the multiple districts. So while I'm not opposed to having that conversation and think about it, I think we need to think really hard about how we want to be structured down the road.
Yeah.
And if we think that 62 is too many SUs, it may very well be. I'm not arguing the point, and I understand why people say it. But we need to know what the impact is if we are going to change to another one. And many of the questions about finances and student opportunity were not able to answer them for me. And so there's some real concerns, I think, on that.
And I agree with you, Emily, and I think we should, I mean, this is why I wanted to think very long and hard about the merger that we just voted on town meeting day, because I thought that there were a lot of questions that weren't answered that were critical to a town like Windham, which is extremely rural, mountain town, the only one in the district, really. Maybe Marlboro is too, but the only one that's part of the Leland and Gray district. And I worry about some of the things that are coming down the road that we haven't anticipated in this merger. So, I also, with no offense to the supervisory union that we've had conversations with in the past, I mean, there are some pretty functional supervisory unions, like Windham Northeast, Windham Southeast, where we could potentially have a conversation. My understanding is that Chris Kibbe is getting done. Do we want to merge with Windham Northeast? And as Antje pointed out, but she didn't say it, you don't necessarily have to be communicating with Newport by driving there anymore. You can have conversations via the internet and Skype and what have you. So I just had to do a little shout out for Antje. But she's been talking about this 3 or 4 years. So.
No, I think they're all good points. Sir, you haven't spoken at all yet.
That brings up a thought. Are these discussions or studies occurring in other parts of the state? Or
No,
are they just looking to the south?
From what we were told in the spring when we went up and saw Rebecca Holcomb was that it was just being done here because they couldn't figure out what to do to help out Windham Southwest because they couldn't find a consultant to work with them. They had been working on a plan longer than we worked on ours. We did our original study and that took us into the summer. They had started we started our study with what we think we could do before we broke up into the 2 different groups. They had already started theirs. They submitted what they thought was going to be a good plan, and it actually, it was totally rejected. Didn't even get a chance to go to the.
It seems to me that this whole talk is being driven by fixing a failing supervisory union and not about saving money or about education.
Well, it does on one of those pages that I read, it does talk about it. That was Ken's question is, it talks about saving triple-digit figures.
Yeah.
But, is that 100,000 or is that 999,000? So that is a question I got there, Okay, sir?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. That leads us, because we're still ahead of time, to facilities, grounds, and transportation position. So at the last meeting, we brought that up both at the meeting in May and our annual meeting. We brought that up in September. The only person that's come forward to serve in that committee, so it may be a really cool committee because it may be a committee of one, is somebody from Marlboro. Selena agreed to do that. Is there anybody that would like to work with
With
Selena
Selena?
on this?
I'm fun.
I don't know.
Everybody wants to work
I'm
with
fun,
someone.
I promise.
I know she worked very well on our committee, didn't she, Dan?
Absolutely.
The West River group.
Yeah, it's all right.
It was all right, well. I'm stunned. If you look at the report from Wyndham Central Supervisory Union from Stephen John dated July 15th, 2014, August 21st, and September 15th, page 2, Facilities and Operations Manager, FY17 or FY18. What budget are we on now? We're looking at FY19, aren't we?
That's right.
So there's a list of what Stephen and Chris came up with that could be was that Chris or was that? Yeah,
Yes,
Chris.
it was Chris.
Provide oversight coordination of building, ground maintenance, related contracted services, food services, grid process for construction equipment supplies services, increase recycling, reducing our system's carbon footprint, meeting compliance requirements for safety, water, HVAC, asbestos, and emergency crisis planning, purpose energy retrofits, and provide cost-benefit analysis, and reports to this position or duties of transportation coordinator on regarding snow days, school closings, also responsibility for school owned or operated transport systems or contracted services or both. If so, each scenario requires a unique skill set and can also be the special ed transportation coordinator. So this is not something new that's just come up. I did ask the central office, if we were to fund a position like this, what would it look like for cost? They're thinking about $100,000 for salary and benefits and whatever the person would need to get started. There could be some cost savings. I don't know if everybody knows. Every school is a public water system. So every school is required to do stuff to maintain that public water system. You have to be licensed to operate a water system in the state of Vermont. A public water system requires a minimum of, is it class 2s or class 3s? Does anybody treat? There's
Well,
two.
we did all get the chlorine systems or the ultra.
Okay, ultras
Yeah.
don't require class 3. So you need a license that requires a minimum of 40 hours up to, I think, 200 hours, and then training every month. You don't have to have a licensed operator on site. So one licensed operator could work at a central office and oversee. They would be responsible. There's testing that's required. Almost every school was built a long time ago enough that they all have asbestos in them. And what the government has decided is to leave the asbestos alone. But you have to do an annual inspection. You have to be licensed, or you become certified, not licensed, to look and see what is required, if everything is still secure and safe. And we know there was a big issue with radon here at Leland and Gray, and I think 2 other schools. There was, but it's something that's now going to require.
We've fixed it.
But it's not fixed. It still requires occasional testing and
Yeah, it'll
maintenance
always
of,
require testing.
and maintenance of the system.
It's a ventilation system.
Yeah, and then just the emergency crisis planning, I guess, Robert Evans
Yes.
is coming around to try to get that all up to speed with people. I know in Dover, ours took 2 years to do, and probably we've got 300 or 400 hours invested in putting ours together for just the Dover Elementary School. Trying to do a multifaceted one for multiple schools is gonna be crazy. Transportation, again, the rules are always changing. We do, some schools own buses, Marlboro, Wyndham, and Dover, and is that it? And then there's some transportation through West River, and there's also, at the possibility, something being coordinated with the Current.
Yes.
A bus coming up.
Talked about that for years.
Yeah, and I did talk to Randy Shoemaker recently, because there's gonna be some changes with Dover and Wardsboro. And he says that the state likes it, and the state wants to approve the Current coming up here. It's just there wasn't enough money from the feds this year for them to do all their projects, but it's still online, and it's something that they hope to get funding for maybe this next legislative session. So there's a whole bunch of things this position can do. So what we're hoping to do is get a group of people together who can maybe look at this, come up with a job description and see, pardon?
Yeah.
It's probably something could happen. Now, $100,000 sounds like a lot. It would increase your budget. You know, you were looking at like a 1% increase. I think it brings you up 10% almost. So instead of $2,800, you'd be looking at $28,000. But before I go and get Ken all riled up, there can also be some cost savings, because now whoever you're paying to be licensed for your water operator in Dover, we hire a guy and we pay him $100 a month. So, you know, there would instantly be a $1,200 savings to us, because now the central office would be responsible for that. The asbestos person, I don't know what we pay him.
We have it too.
You know, and then it's all the different schools too. So I think we can look at it, and so the central office budget may increase again, but we may be able to reduce our personal budgets. And again, some of us, you know, and I talked about it just in Dover a couple weeks ago, is, you know, I know our building inside and out because I've been there. I was there through the construction, the addition. I can tell you everything about it. But when Bill wasn't there and I wasn't there and Matt had questions, nobody knew anything. You know, it was difficult. We have a portable classroom we tried to sell to Newbrook back 25 years ago, and they wouldn't buy it, and we're still dealing with it.
It's new thing now.
Yeah, it was Newfane we tried to sell it to.
We had to.
Yeah, well, you bought used ones, and then
They were terrible.
bigger than ours.
They're leaking.
So there's all this kind of stuff that's going on, and we're gonna lose a lot of that institutional knowledge when when it's not, the board is not a town board, but it's more of a community board. And then eventually Ken and I are gonna stop coming to meetings, and we're gonna go to Rick's Tavern and have beer on Wednesday nights. Emily will still be here though.
Let me know.
I don't think so.
So that's what we're looking for. Is there any volunteers to help Selena, or is she gonna be a committee of one?
They really should be.
I would like to see a write-up of an analysis of what the potential savings could be.
So you're volunteering for the committee?
No, I'm not volunteering for anything. I'm on 4 boards right now.
He's just giving tasks to the committee.
I'm just saying.
If you're not volunteering, I don't see how you can give tasks.
I'm not, no, I'm a member of the board. I'm just saying what I think the board
Okay,
should
so
really see.
I'm gonna send an invitation
While I
out to
agree with you, there
everybody.
are some savings. I want to see
That's a good
where
idea.
and about how much to see if it's actually feasible.
And again, and I don't know on the solar stuff with you guys too, but was very serious with the solar. Because of the way the solar works, it's not like you get money, you get credits. And some people, you know, they're all on estimated things, and to make sure your credits are all properly accounted for, I gotta tell you, because of the multiplier and because of other things that come into play, Green Mountain Power was not prepared to do this. And they messed up it took us over a year to get our bills straightened out so that they're actually right, and now we still have to check them every month. So, I mean, a position like that is gonna create in your office. Yeah, it's not, and again, Ken, there's good savings. I mean, ours is 20%. I don't know what you guys negotiated. And then we keep 5% from all the town people, so we're getting almost 25% on a lot of the energy. But it's, I mean, it's a huge paperwork nightmare.
So I don't know how many boards, of our current boards have a building committee, but Leland and Gray does. And because he didn't show up tonight, I'm gonna just pick on Drew, because Drew is a very active and valuable member of our building committee. So if you will be willing to send that email out to everybody, and Joe and I can maybe lean on him a little, maybe he would be willing to step, he's really busy, he may not be able to do it. But he, you know, it's helpful to have somebody who's actually engaged in that conversation already. And I would love to do it. I love being on building committees, but there's no way I have time right now to do it. I wouldn't
Joe,
be as
you're on
much
that
of a
committee
help.
too, aren't you?
I was just, well, Drew, Al, and I are the building committee for the new for the West
Yeah, for the
River
West
Board.
River Board.
So between the 3 of us, one of us will probably end up
You're not
stepping
alone.
up to be on that committee.
Is there any, Carol, do you have a building committee
We'll
at all?
hash it out.
We take care of it, the school board takes care of it, the school board takes care of transportation, and I think we'd like to probably opt out of being charged for this if we move forward with our alternative governance structure for $2,250. The school board deals with transportation, et cetera.
And if we find out it's saving more than it cost us, are you just gonna take the savings? It's a
We're
two-way
just
street here,
talking about
I'm just,
We're gonna have our own budget.
She'll have, yeah, let's do something.
Is there any other school that has a building committee? Any
It's
other
not
schools?
common.
We handle the school board.
Okay.
Town's in May, but I don't know.
Who does your water system?
We pay somebody.
You know what you pay?
It's about $100 a month.
Yeah.
Yeah, Works Road, the
What about
beginning of the
Thompson?
school year, we had a problem with the water system. We spent a lot of money with Matthew Beck trying to fix it. I mean,
There's some overlap.
and it's, Tammy, the principal, spent a lot of time doing it, so I mean,
Yeah.
he fully
Take
supports
them
the
away
same
from
thing.
educational.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, even with the school board, we're very active in Dover, but you can't be there every day to oversee a water project like that.
It does take up a lot of the principal's time,
Yeah.
managing, getting
And that's
quotes.
kind of the talk we've had is,
Right.
you know, does that improve student educational quality?
Right.
If the principal gets to spend more time taking care of working with the staff and doing professional development versus,
Digging up oil tanks.
yeah.
Well,
Oh,
her
you got an
professional.
outside oil tank too? Wow.
The principal's professional development was learning about water systems for the first 2 weeks of school.
Yeah. And that's right, because this was her first year,
Oh,
wasn't
yeah,
it?
she.
So we want to hear from our,
So I just want to say that I'm so glad you came to that point, because that's what I've said this entire time, that so much of this takes away from principals' time, and we really need them to focus on instruction and student outcomes and learning. And this is a big piece of the job. Being a former principal, I understand that. I learned a lot about boilers and roofs and buses, you know, during that time. So I trust the committee to make those decisions, but it is a big factor that I hope is taken into consideration.
is there a way, can we look at this as an agency fee item?
Of course.
Of course. Yeah, I was thinking that
Because
same
then that
thing.
would cover
when-
Carolyn's
Yeah.
concern. Would you be okay, guys, be
Yeah.
supportive of that?
Yep.
And then you can look at it, and if in the future you decide you want to jump in,
Can you say the acronym again?
an agency fee item. Okay, so that's something for us to look into.
Sounds good, Rich.
Okay.
And another reason, if I can just jump in here, would be the solar thing. I mean, I don't know what proportion of the time would be spent on that, but schools don't have any solar to deal with. Would presumably, the agency fund would figure that out somehow. So.
Bill, how many hours you put in on that solar thing?
Oh,
And
don't
weren't-
ask.
weren't we very active with that? Not on the West River one or the.
No, when I was at Dover,
Just Dover specific, I mean, we,
100, 200
Really?
yeah.
plus. Oh, my God.
Yeah, you could put a lot of hours into it.
And then some things really
Right,
got,
Lori
but
knows.
things got
Yeah.
missed because, you know, they changed the plan on us and kind of it got, oh yeah, it's the same, we just made a couple little changes and, you know, if there'd been, and we were very active with that, there was 3 members on the school board. And it kind of got over our head, so we got trees that got cut that we didn't think were supposed to get cut. And so, I mean, there is some things that can happen.
One last comment. We don't have, oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's
Go
okay.
ahead.
I just
Lynn.
wanted to say about talking about expertise in the right area too.
Right.
You know, and it's really important when you're dealing with solar. I've had to learn solar, and I've had to vet everything through our attorneys, which should be done anyway. But there are a lot of things that I just didn't know, that I had to learn, and it took a lot of my time, like Tammy, first 2 weeks of her tenure. So I think that just having that expertise in different areas is very important, and that will save money. Looking over RFPs. Leland and Gray is doing a heating system right now. We hired John Penny, who's an engineer, to write the RFP to do those heating control system, and then Ed and I were reviewing it. So it's really important to have that expertise.
Oh, just a quick comment. I don't know if we're actually giving a charge, a formal charge to this committee. It does sound like we're moving forward with this committee. And I would suggest that we're not, I mean, this is something that isn't new. You know, it's been happening, but it's being promoted more and more all the time. I hear about it quite often. And Visbit, in fact, has been really encouraging that kind of thing as well. So I would expect that we can contact this committee could contact other SUs and the people who have had them in place for a little while and get some really good information from them, especially if they're rural ones like this with multiple buildings.
Any other comments? We beat that one up pretty well. I haven't gotten a needle thrown at me yet, guys. I think we're in good shape.
Nah.
It wasn't a knit needle, luckily.
Just keep you on your toes.
So, Bill, do you have a tentative agreement for us to ratify?
Joe does.
Okay. So I've got 5 contracts here. If somebody could make a motion for the chair to sign these employment contracts, please.
Seconded.
Who moved?
I did.
Okay, Selena moved and Ken seconded it. So real quick, it's for Heather Bertram as a Wyndham Central employee for, what is she for, Bill? For early childhood instructional interventionist.
She's working with our triple E students.
Okay, and then a contract for Heather
Lockley.
Lockley,
I know, it doesn't look that way.
okay, and certified occupational therapy assistant, and Rebecca Lapointe as a Wyndham Central SU teacher. So where's
She's the new nurse. right?
new nurse, where,
She's a .90, she is shared at.
.83 it says.
.3. She's at, oh, hey.
I was just gonna say, we need somebody, can we share her?
Okay, so anyways, where's she now? This is specific to this one, so
Yes,
That's all we need.
Rebecca Lapointe.
where is she?
She is at, I'm trying to remember right now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Newbrook.
Jamaica, Wardsboro, Townsend.
No, she's a .83.
Right.
So she's an agency fund person.
Yes.
Okay, and then we have Beth Merle as a teacher,
Special educator.
special educator, and then we have Melissa Wood has read all over hers. And she's in here as a teacher too for.
Right, because we had to move her, we had to shift some of her percentage to special ed from, she was partially local and partially title.
Okay, so now she's a 1-0.
Right.
Okay. So those are the 5. We have a motion and a second. Motion and second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so now I need an executive session. I gotta sign again. I need a motion to move into executive session for a contractual issue.
Could I
Yes.
ask for the details of those?
Yeah, Bill will get them to you, or
Thanks.
you probably have them, right? Okay, so I have a motion by Carolyn. Do I have a second?
Second?
By Selena at 8:42. To go into executive session. Is any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. We're in executive session. Unanimous consent at 8:53. We're out of executive session. Is there anybody who'd like to make a motion?
I'll make it.
Okay, Carolyn moved. Will you second it?
Sure.
Okay, so the motion is to approve the agreement that was made with the Wyndham, with the Wyndham Central Education Association Vermont NEA/NEA. And I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries. You have a new agreement. Who signs it?
Well, we have to get it
You do.
all.
Okay.
This one.
You will.
Okay.
We gotta do the tour though.
You'll get it to me and sign it, yeah.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
Is it important to move executive?
Yes, Carolyn moved
Carolyn,
it and
yeah,
Joe
Joe.
Winter seconded it.
Thank you.
He gave us a second on it.
Emily Long makes a motion to adjourn.
Emily Long moves to adjourn at 8:50. Well,
One quick thing.
Oh, sorry.
Keep your stuff because, okay, you guys just sent 3 of your officers up, which will occur before your November 15th meeting.
So if they come back and report, you may want to keep the stuff that you have, so I don't have to reprint
And
it.
you emailed it to everybody.
He's not-
And I emailed to everybody, and I'm not gonna bring more copies.
Is it available on the Wyndham Central website?
Those reports?
Yes.
I can make them.
Let's make them available on Wyndham Central.
I'll put them on
And then let
this
everybody know.
night's agenda.
Okay,
If anybody needs a packet, here's one.
okay,
So, all right.
and then Emily moves to
Al might
adjourn
want
at
that.
8:55.
Al might want that,
Second.
'cause he's gotta go
Selena
with us.
seconds, everybody's in
Okay.
favor. Carolyn, you're 5 minutes early.
I can take it and try and give it to him, but.
Well, I mean, I wanna make sure Al has
Thank
a
you, Rich.
copy of
Okay,
it.
can we leave this for Al or get it next time?